Hi, I'm Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Monday, February 5th. Well, not much happened over the weekend. Philadelphia won the Super Bowl, and Donald Trump, although he emoted regularly on Twitter, didn't seem to move the public very much to his point of view on whether or not the Nunes memo showed that the FBI was out to get him. On the Sunday shows, even a group of Republicans said, no, this doesn't end the Russian probe. There's serious things there to be studied and more to come. Let's hope so. Today at the Capitol at noon, there was a demonstration by a group that picked up the baton for Martin Luther King Jr., who 50 years ago called for a poor people's campaign to seek moral justice out of legislatures across the country. Some 30 states are represented by grassroots groups and religious people who promise civil disobedience by spring, unless there's some solid action in behalf of the forgotten people of America by the legislature. I think that means we'll have civil disobedience. I don't expect much out of the U.S. Congress or the Arkansas legislature, for that matter, in terms of moral justice for poor people. Big political news today in Little Rock. State Representative Clarke Tucker, a Democrat, announced that he'll enter the race for 2nd District Congress against incumbent Republican French Hill. 2 Democrats are already in that race, Paul Spencer and Gwen Combs. It's not a bad thing to have 3 Democrats seeking this office. I think Clarke Tucker, with some name recognition and past proven fundraising ability, clearly has to become a very strong candidate, perhaps the leading candidate for this race. I hope they don't cut each other up in the interest of the bigger prize, which is to beat French Hill, who has represented Donald Trump's interests, but not so much the interests of people in the 2nd District. Speaking of Republican politicians, Secretary of State Mark Martin of Arkansas lost one today. He'd tried to intervene in a U.S. Supreme Court case to get the U.S. Supreme Court to delay a Pennsylvania State Supreme Court ruling that said that state's congressional districts needed to be redistricted because they were gerrymandered to benefit Republicans. It was a long-shot Hail Mary move by Republicans, and even Samuel Alito of the Supreme Court wouldn't go along. Sorry, Mark. They're going to redistrict Pennsylvania, we hope, in time for the 2018 election. You know, there may be something to this hardcore conservative fight against the Medicaid expansion in Arkansas, known as Arkansas Works, which was enabled by Obamacare. There are 3 people short in the state Senate for this fiscal session. That means it might be easier, particularly if at least one of those seats goes over to the right kind of senator from the opponent's point of view in a special election, to round up 10 or so votes that could block approval of the continuation of the Arkansas Works project, even with some of the punitive measures that Asa Hutchins wants to add to make it more palatable to rich people by punishing poor people. Well, I say this because there was an interesting story in the Democrat this weekend about a 3-way race in Russellville for the late Greg Standridge's seat. One of the candidates is a guy named Bob Bailey, a firearms manufacturer, an opponent of one world government, he says, as I think most of us probably are. But it turns out that nearly all of his money, 80% of it anyway, has come from pretty much a single source, the same post office box and 8 PACs that all owe their establishment to a co-founder of Conduit for Action, an ultra-conservative group founded and funded by a manufacturer named Joe Maynard that's been fighting Arkansas Works from day one. I think Bob Bailey made it clear that if he gets in the Senate, he won't be a vote for it. And speaking of firearms manufacturers, Bob Bailey likes to tout the silencers he makes. I haven't seen ads for bump stocks on his website, but there's now a movement we find nationwide in both some states led by Republicans and some cities to ban bump stocks. This is a device that can turn a semi-automatic rifle into an automatic rifle. It was used to kill dozens and wound hundreds in Las Vegas. Not a very good thing, not a gun safety device. I've urged Representative Charlie Collins, who thinks more guns make us safer, to perhaps make sure that bump stocks aren't legally sold in Arkansas. I don't think I'll hold my breath for that to happen. Speaking of crime in the Super Bowl, last night there were huge displays on the streets of Philadelphia after the Eagles win. They vandalized cars, vandalized public property, turned over big pieces of landscaping. Generally did what if Black Lives Matter had done it, you would have called it a riot, but it was just called a celebration, and the police kindly urged people to have their fun and then please go home. What's a riot? What's a celebration? I don't guess it has anything to do with what the subject of unhappiness is, a Super Bowl victory or police brutality and unjustified killing of black people. That's subject to arrest. And finally, in the crazy news department, Bart Hester, a conservative state senator from northwest Arkansas, put up a tweet just a little while ago that said UALR is wasting taxpayers' money, and he doesn't like the taxpayers subsidizing it, to rent a billboard that tells people you can major in dance at UALR. He says we should only be advertising things like computer science. Dance doesn't mean much to Bart Hester. I happen to be one that thinks all kinds of education are good things. Even a baseball team. Bart Hester played baseball at the University of Arkansas. Perhaps too many beanballs have affected his thinking. I'm resisting. You do too. I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back tomorrow.